The corruption of the welfare industrial complex is on full display, with reports that Minnesota Somalis siphoned over $1 billion in food stamp fraud, housing fraud, addiction program fraud, children's autism fraud, on top of the ever-popular Medicaid fraud. We can only guess the voting fraud. The running theme has been how shockingly easy it is to defraud the government, to snag hundreds of thousands of taxpayer money and tens of millions in federal grants to NGOs. Of course, as such as Somalis, federal auditor GAO estimates up to $500 billion is stolen in fraud in an empire of welfare that costs over $2.5 trillion per year. For perspective, $500 billion could abolish the income tax for 90% of Americans, everybody up to $125K. Instead, it goes to fraud. Of course, fraud is just the tip of the iceberg because almost all welfare goes to people who don't actually need it. They could work, but they choose not to. We know this because the world existed before welfare. So in the 1950s, before Democrats turned means-tested programs into the greatest vote-buying scheme since bread and circuses, now back then, welfare focused on people who could not work. So the blind, the disabled, impoverished seniors. Roughly 5 million Americans were on welfare. That's about 3% of the population. Today, that has ballooned to almost 30% of Americans who are on some means-tested program, from Medicaid and SNAP to Section 8 and TANF cash payments. 42 million are on SNAP alone. It's even worse in dollars. In the 1950s, welfare cost about $40 billion a year, adjusting for inflation and population size. Today, it is 60 times higher. In other words, literal fraud may only be a fifth of welfare, but 90 to 98% is not necessary. It's vote buying. Vote buying that destroys the recipients who are bribed to remain poor. One Cato Institute study estimated the full welfare package pays better than half the median income nationwide. Keep in mind, you don't have to work for it. It pays 3/4 the median in blue states like California. It pays 90% of median household income in Hawaii, suggesting the real mystery is why so few people are on welfare. Perhaps they are too proud or they don't know any Somalis. So as next brought to you by I Trust Capital, the welfare industrial complex is bankrupting the country, and it's why illiterate illegals can get jobs. Welfare bribes low-skilled natives out of the job market. Elon tried to use Doge to flag fraud, but the much bigger problem is that 98% who just don't want to work. Republicans nibble at the edges, trimming Medicaid for the able-bodied in the big, beautiful bill, and standing up to Democrats on Medicaid for illegals in the shutdown. But in that shutdown, we saw the awesome power of the welfare industrial complex when Republicans cowered before the might of 42 million food stamp recipients who may not vote their pocketbook, but they certainly do vote yours. The wider concern is if a third of the population is on welfare, and another 15% of voters work for government, that's an overwhelming head start for the party of big government with tens of millions of clients on the payroll. Read the rest with charts and all the gory details at profstandknowledge.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.